Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video first look and a quick review of a relatively inexpensive mechanical keyboard produced by AULA. And you can find this on Amazon for around sub $60, which I think is fairly attractive and comes in two colors, black and white. It's a pretty typical layout as far as being a 787 key keyboard goes, and you have backlight options that allow you to also change the lighting and play with that. So it's going to be great if you also are gaming or typing in the dark. So you can see here the packaging itself is actually fairly fancy looking, and the site also includes basic info including the color as well as the backlighting patterns that you might get in the box. And if we turn the box all the way over, there's a bit more details about what it looks like once it's fully illuminated, in addition to the keys. So you can get it in a few different keys. The version that we have here is actually using a blue dome for the mechanical keys. You can see that the action here is labeled out in terms of the specifications. There's also black and gold as well as in red options. So the good thing about mechanical keyboards, of course, is that it will last a fair bit longer than your typical membrane style keyboard or island keyboard. It also creates a more tactile feedback when you are typing. So some people would really prefer that if they do a ton of gaming or a ton of typing. Perhaps if you're computer programming, this might be a good option and will last you for years and years down the road. There's also a label here that you can see that means the keyboard itself is authentic, and the packaging here again is fairly impressive. If I open this up, you have the AULA, the company's logo. It's well protected and comes with that cable, which is non-detachable. It's a USB 2.0 connection, and it's a plug-and-play keyboard, so you simply insert it into the computer for it to work, and it's going to work with Macs as well as PCs. So let's take a quick look at the keyboard next, but first, underneath here, there's access also to a quick start guide instruction warranty that is fairly well documented, unfortunately only in Chinese though. And there's also a bit of an adapter here that allows you to more easily remove individual keys so that you can also wash the keys if they get dirty. All right, so this is what the keyboard looks like. As you can see, the bezels surrounding the individual keys is very slim. So overall, for a full-size keyboard, this one doesn't take up too much space, which is great if you're tight on space on a desk. Also makes it a bit easier to carry around. Otherwise, AULA really did a good job with construction quality here, because the base plate that you can see here is actually made out of aluminum, so it is fully metal, and there's a chrome accent running on the edges as well. So it does have a very classy overall look. And personally, I think that this black version that you see here is also quite interesting, because once the backlight turns on, it makes the glow effect more apparent than the typical white version that you can also find. So otherwise, on the side here, you have access to the company's logo. You have dedicated keys for the arrows. It is missing a dedicated numpad, so if you do a lot of calculations, that is something that you won't find here. Otherwise, you have quick launch shortcuts function keys on the very top, in addition to the standard Windows keys down below, so pretty easy to use. Not too much media controls going on here, so that's something else that you're not going to really find. But you do have access to things like play pause, in addition to print screen functions labeled out on the top as well. So otherwise, if we kind of remove one of the keys here, such as the spacebar key, apply a little bit of force, you can see the domes underneath. Indeed, it uses just this one mechanical blue dome. It is very tactile, very clicky, very responsive, and it uses two springs to distribute the weight a bit more. So no matter where you're typing or pressing the key on it, it has a pretty even feeling when you're using. The nice things about mechanical keyboards is you don't have to apply as much force as a regular membrane keyboard, for instance. So you can just tap very lightly, and because of the springs, it really does part of the work for you. So it's going to actually press down on a key and will be able to type out that letter that you're pressing on. So in general, if you're typing for longer periods of time, it does save you a bit of energy and force. So if we turn the keyboard all the way over, there's a few other things I want to point out really quickly. There are 2 feet on the back of this model, which allows you to pop it up at an angle for easier typing. Also has rubber feet on the back as well, which prevents the keyboard from sliding around on a surface or a desk. So overall, a pretty attractive layout. So next we're going to go over some of the lighting effects by plugging this into power onto a computer. You can see the plug here is gold plated, which shows quite a bit of attention to detail and does ensure a very tight connection. So one area where AULA was able to cut corners a bit was use a typical wire as opposed to a braided, a removable, or a flat ribbon wire, which we've seen from slightly more expensive options in the past, but it's not really a huge deal here, and I still feel like it's quite sturdy in terms of construction quality. So after you plug the keyboard into a laptop's USB port, it will start to light up automatically, and again, it's a plug and play solution which doesn't require any additional drivers to be installed. installed and simply works afterwards. You can see here the backlight here is set at this kind of interesting looking mode initially, where you have all the lights on. Of course, it starts off kind of in this rainbow pattern. We have the red lights on the very top all the way down to purple at the bottom. All right, so there are a few different lighting modes that you can select. As you can see here, this is one of them, which is an animated, always changing pattern that goes back and forth between a few different modes automatically. So it's going to be great, I guess, if you want to show guests, or if you just want this on maybe as something to add a bit of lighting onto a room. But you can also go and create more dedicated lighting patterns as well. So for instance, if I tap on the function and then tap on F8 or F9 here, this is actually a mode dedicated for gamers, so it's only going to light up certain keys that will position your thumbs and fingers correctly when you're gaming. And I can also tap on function F10, which kind of changes that configuration a bit, and same thing with F11. Tapping on F8 here is actually going to turn on that animated kind of light mode, where it's going to ripple through all of the individual keys, and once it's finished with that, it's going to go through and create kind of a ripple pattern back and forth, at first really quickly, and then later on slowly. And when it's done with that, it's going to go on to the next pattern. So it has a preset kind of number of ways to kind of show off the lighting effect. Unfortunately, there's really no way to access individual animations, so I can only use one animation out of this kind of slide of animations. And there's also not that rippling effect, which is something that we found on similar mechanical keyboards in the past, where if you tap on an individual key, it lights up or creates a ripple pattern across the keyboard. So some of those features are missing, and you will only find on more expensive AULA gaming and mechanical keyboards. At the end of the day, I have to say that AULA did a fairly good job for a low-cost mechanical keyboard. The keys themselves are responsive, they're easy to type on. There's a slight amount of mushiness to some of the keys, so it's not as sharp as mechanical keyboards perhaps in a higher price bracket, but it still is very tactile, very responsive. I feel like it's going to last me for years and years down the road. The construction quality here is top notch, and it has really fun lighting effects for you to play around with. It doesn't have quite the extent of features that you find again on more expensive models, but for the price here, I really think that they did a great job. You get a great typing experience and a very interesting conversation starter all in one. You can check out more details about this keyboard, including the typing test that we performed on it, as well as some various features in our official written review, which is coming out soon. But for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. This has been AULA, Killing the Soul Mechanical